The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets it held. When humans finally built ships that could travel between stars, they found something they never expected. They were not alone. The galaxy was full of life. Dozens of intelligent species had built empires across the stars. At the center of it all sat the Galactic Council, a group of 7 ancient races who had ruled known space for 12,000 years. There were tall beings with silver scales and 4 glowing eyes. There were massive warriors with thick armor-like skin. They floated like living light. They had tentacles and brilliant minds. They built machines that could think. The Ophidians were cold and calculating snake-like creatures. There were the youngest, insect-like beings who had only joined the council a few centuries ago. These 7 species believed they were the masters of all creation. They had watched younger races rise and fall for thousands of years. When humanity appeared and began building colonies on distant worlds, the council watched with growing worry. Humans spread fast, too fast. In just 200 years, they had claimed over 40 star systems. They built cities on frozen moons and floating stations in gas giant clouds. They mined asteroids and turned dead worlds into gardens. The council had never seen anything like it. They breed like insects, High Arbiter said during a council meeting. He was the leader of and the most powerful being in the galaxy. They spread without control. They consume resources without thought for the future. They are dangerous, agreed War Master of the. My scouts report that their military grows stronger each year. They have developed weapons we do not fully understand. The council debated for months. Some argued that humans should be welcomed as partners. The representatives spoke of humanity's art, their music, their strange but beautiful culture. But these voices were few. In the end, fear won. Admiral Jack was 53 years old and had served in the United Human Federation Navy for 30 years. He had gray hair, tired eyes, and scars from battles most people had forgotten. On the day everything changed, he stood on the bridge of his ship, the USS Defiance, watching his crew run routine checks. Admiral called out his communications officer, a young man named Tony Vega. We are receiving a transmission. It is coming from Council space. Priority 1. Frowned, the Council rarely spoke directly to human ships. Put it through. The holographic projector hummed to life. A figure appeared in blue light. It was High Arbiter himself. His 4 eyes burned with cold fire. His silver scales gleamed. He looked at like a man might look at an insect. Humans of the Federation, began. His voice was deep and filled with contempt. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. Your species has been judged. You expand without permission. You consume without restraint. You threaten the stability that has kept this galaxy at peace for. Felt his hands tighten into fists. By unanimous decree, continued, humanity is declared a threat to galactic civilization. You are given 60 rotations to comply with the following demands. First, you will abandon all colonies beyond your home system. Second, you will destroy your military fleet. Third, you will accept permanent quarantine on your of Earth. You will never again travel among the stars. The bridge had gone completely silent. Every officer stared at the hologram with wide eyes. If you refuse, said, and a cruel smile crossed his alien face, we will burn every human world to ash. We will hunt your people to the last child. Your species will be erased from history. You have 60 rotations. Choose wisely. The hologram vanished. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Commander, second in command, stepped forward. She was a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. But now, her jaw was set with anger. They cannot be serious, she said. They are completely serious, replied. The Council has done this before. The entire species wiped out because the Council decided they were dangerous. What do we do? Asked Chief Engineer Sam, a heavy-set man with kind eyes and grease-stained hands. looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of humans lived their lives without knowing that an alien government had just sentenced them to death. Mothers were putting children to bed. Farmers were tending crops on distant worlds. Students were studying. Lovers were holding hands. All of them marked for extinction. "We fight," said quietly. "We have no other choice." On Earth, President Daniel called an emergency meeting. Leaders from every human world gathered in the Great Hall of the Federation capital. The Council's message played on a massive screen. When it ended, the room erupted in chaos. Some demanded surrender. A few even argued that humanity deserved punishment for growing too fast, but most were angry. Generations of humans had worked and sacrificed to build a future among the stars. They had earned their place through sweat and blood and dreams. No alien council had the right to take that away. President was a calm man, but even he felt rage building in his chest. His grandfather had died building the first colony on Mars. His mother had spent her life terraforming a dead world into a paradise. His daughter lived on a station orbiting a distant star with her young children. "We will not surrender," announced. His voice carried across the silent hall. "We will not abandon our homes. We will not give up our future because some arrogant aliens fear what we might become." He looked at the faces around him, young and old, men and women, scientists and soldiers, artists and engineers, all of them human, all of them family. "If the Council wants a war," said, "they will get one, and they will learn what every enemy in human history has learned. We do not break, we do not surrender, we survive." The Federation sent a single message back to the Council. It was broadcast on every frequency, sent to every corner of the galaxy. One word that carried the weight of 8 billion souls. "No." High Arbiter received the message in his throne room. He read it once, then laughed. "Foolish creatures," he said to his advisors. "They do not understand what they face. In 60 rotations we will teach them." He was wrong. The Council would learn many things in the coming war, but the most important lesson was simple. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near extinction more times than anyone could count. They had clawed their way out of darkness again and again. The Council thought they were starting a war. They were wrong about that too. They were starting their own extinction. The Council Armada arrived at New Helsinki on a cold morning. The planet was a frozen world that humans had slowly turned into a home over 50 years. 3 million people lived there, in domed cities that glowed with warmth against the endless snow. Children played in heated parks. Workers mined precious metals from the ice. Families gathered for breakfast, not knowing that death was falling from the sky. War Master stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fury. Around him, 2,000 Council warships blocked out the stars. Each ship was massive, some of them over 5 kilometers long. They carried weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been broken, had fought in 12 wars over his long life. He had never lost. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Show these humans what happens to species that defy the Council." The first wave of fighters screamed toward the planet, expected the human defenses to crumble quickly. His intelligence officers had told him that human technology was primitive, barely worthy of attention. The orbital platforms around New Helsinki were old and weak. This would be easy. He was wrong. General Amy Reeves had been preparing for this moment since the day the Council made their threat. She was a small woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had grown up on a mining colony where life was hard and survival was never guaranteed. She knew how to fight against impossible odds. "Hold fire," she ordered her defense teams. "Let them get closer." The Council fighters swooped in, confident and careless. They had destroyed hundreds of primitive civilizations. Humans would be no different. "Now," Reeves said. The orbital platforms came alive, but these were not the weak weapons the Council expected. Hidden beneath their old shells were new technologies that humanity had kept secret. Kinetic accelerators fired tungsten rods at incredible speeds. One moment a council fighter was there. The next moment it was dust. Directed energy weapons cut through the sky like burning knives, slicing through shields that were supposed to be unbreakable. In the first hour, 300 council ships died. Watched in disbelief as his fighters fell from the sky, his screens filled with damage reports and death counts. This was impossible. These were humans, primitive apes who had barely crawled out of their muddy planet. How were they doing this? "Increase power to all weapons," he roared. "Bring in the heavy cruisers. Burn those platforms from orbit." The cruisers moved forward, their massive guns charging. They fired beams of pure destruction at the orbital defenses. Platforms exploded. Reeves lost a third of her weapons in minutes. But it was enough. The platforms had bought time. From behind the planet's moon, human warships emerged. They were smaller than council vessels, but they moved with frightening speed. Admiral led them himself from the bridge of the Defiance. "All ships," he commanded, "target their cruisers. Hit them fast and do not stop moving." The human ships did not fight like council vessels. Council warfare was old and formal, with ships lining up to exchange fire like ancient armies. Humans fought dirty. They came from every direction at once. They used asteroids as cover. They fired missiles that split into dozens of smaller weapons. They rammed damaged ships into enemy formations. Had never seen anything like it. His officers did not know how to respond. Their training had not prepared them for an enemy that refused to follow the rules. On the surface of New Helsinki, the real nightmare began. Colonel led the 47th Armored Division through the streets of Helsinki Prime, the planet's capital city. Council troops had begun landing, expecting easy conquest. They found something very different. Was a tall man with dark skin and a deep voice. He had grown up in the slums of a colony world where gangs fought for every scrap of food. He had learned to fight before he learned to read. Now he used those hard lessons against an alien enemy. "Remember," he told his soldiers, "they have better shields and better guns, but they have never fought anyone who wants to win as badly as we do." The ground troops were huge, nearly 3 meters tall with thick natural armor. Their weapons could vaporize a human in a single shot. In a fair fight, they would win easily. Did not fight fair. His soldiers hid in buildings and tunnels. They set traps with explosives and falling rubble. They attacked from shadows and vanished before the enemy could respond. They found themselves hunted in a city they thought they had conquered. Private Tors was only 22 years old. She had joined the military to pay for her education and never expected to see real combat. Now she crouched in a destroyed building, watching a patrol march past. Her hands shook as she held the detonator. "Steady," whispered through her earpiece. "Wait for my signal." The soldiers moved with confidence. Their translator devices picked up human distress calls from all directions. They assumed the humans were running in fear. "Now," said Tors, pressed the button. The building across the street collapsed onto the patrol. Before the dust settled, human soldiers emerged from hidden positions and finished off the survivors. It was over in seconds. "Move to the next position," ordered. "Do not give them time to regroup." By the end of the first day, they had lost 2,000 ground troops. They had expected to conquer the planet in hours. Instead, they were trapped in a nightmare of ambushes and explosions. War Master recalled his ground forces. He recalled his remaining ships. He had lost nearly half his fleet and gained nothing. As his battered armada limped away from New Helsinki, he composed a message to the council. "The humans are not what we expected," he reported. "They do not fight with honor. They do not value their own lives. They use tactics we have never encountered. They are not prey. They are something far more dangerous." High Arbiter received the message in silence. Around him, The other council leaders shifted nervously. This was supposed to be a simple extermination. It was becoming something else entirely. "Send more ships," ordered. "Send every fleet we have. These creatures must be destroyed before they become a true threat." But it was already too late for that. On New Helsinki, General Reeves stood in the ruins of her command center. Half her staff was dead. The city burned around her, but the enemy was gone and her people were alive. "We held," she said to no one in particular. "Against everything they threw at us, we held." Across human space, the news spread like wildfire. The mighty council had attacked with overwhelming force, and humans had fought them to a standstill. For the first time since the war began, humanity felt something other than fear. They felt hope. And in that hope, buried deep, was something the council should have feared more than any weapon. Anger, pure, righteous, burning anger. The council had wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, they had awakened something ancient and terrible, something that had survived every challenge the universe had thrown at it. Now that something was coming for them, 6 months had passed since the first battle at New Helsinki. The galaxy had expected humanity to fall quickly. Ancient empires with thousands of years of experience should have crushed these young upstarts within weeks. Instead, something impossible was happening. Humanity was winning. The Council threw fleet after fleet at human colonies. They burned cities and killed millions. But for every world they destroyed, humans struck back twice as hard. Shipyards in Council space exploded in the night. Supply lines vanished. Officers disappeared from their quarters, never to be seen again. The war had become a nightmare that the Council could not wake up from. Dr. Laura worked in a secret research facility buried deep beneath the frozen surface of Titan, one of Saturn's moons. She was 45 years old with messy red hair and circles under her eyes from months without proper sleep. Before the war, she had studied alien languages. Now she studied alien weapons. Every piece of Council technology captured in battle was brought to her facility. Shield generators from cruisers, engine cores from destroyers, computer systems from drones. Laura and her team of 300 scientists took them apart piece by piece. "The Council has had these technologies for thousands of years," Laura explained to Admiral during one of his rare visits. "They have stopped improving them. They think they have already reached perfection. They are wrong." She showed him a modified shield generator. It was smaller than the original Council version, but twice as powerful. "We figured out how their shields work," she said. "Then we made them better, much better." Human ships began receiving upgrades. New shields that could absorb punishing amounts of damage. New engines that let them outrun anything the Council could send. New weapons that punched through enemy defenses like paper. The Council kept waiting for humanity to run out of resources, to grow tired, to give up. They did not understand that giving up was not something humans knew how to do. Captain Chris became a legend during those months. He commanded a small ship called the Nighthawk, barely larger than a Council shuttle. With a crew of just 40 people, he caused more damage than entire fleets. Was 38 years old with a thin face and cold blue eyes. He never raised his voice and rarely smiled. His crew was terrified of him and would follow him into hell without hesitation. His tactics were simple but devastating. He would track Council supply convoys across deep space, waiting for the perfect moment. Then his ship would appear from nowhere, destroy the transport vessels, and vanish before escort ships could respond. He hit shipyards in the middle of the night, destroying half-built warships before they could ever fire a shot. He planted bombs on Council stations that exploded days later, causing chaos and fear. They called him the Ghost, they called him the Shadow, they simply called him Death. "How do you do it?" asked his first officer, a young woman named Sophie Grant, one night as they drifted through an asteroid field. "How do you always know where to strike?" Stared at his tactical display for a long moment before answering. The council thinks like rulers. They expect everyone to follow their rules, their patterns, their ways of doing things. They cannot imagine someone who thinks differently. That is their weakness. That is what will destroy them. The biggest strike came 3 months into this new phase of the war. Admiral Grant, no relation to Sophie, commanded a fleet of just 40 human warships. She was 60 years old with white hair and a face lined by decades of service. Everyone said she was too old for combat. She intended to prove them wrong. Her target was the home system. There were the builders of the council, their shipyards producing half of all council vessels. If those shipyards could be destroyed, the council's ability to wage war would be crippled. The system is heavily defended, her tactical officer warned. Over 500 warships guard the primary shipyard alone. I know, Grant replied. That is why we are not going to fight them. Her plan was insane. It was suicidal. It was brilliant. The 40 human ships jumped directly into the heart of the system, appearing just kilometers from the primary shipyard. Before the defending fleet could react, before alarms could sound, before anyone understood what was happening, the human ships fired everything they had at the massive station. The shipyard was 20 kilometers long. It held materials for building 1,000 warships. It had operated without interruption for 8,000 years. It took less than 4 minutes to destroy. The explosion was visible from the billions of beings looked up at their sky and saw a new sun blooming where their greatest achievement had been. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, the human ships vanished into hyperspace. Grant lost only 3 vessels. She killed tens of thousands of workers and destroyed equipment that would take centuries to replace. They wanted us afraid, she broadcast to the stunned population before she left. They should have been afraid of us. The council held an emergency meeting. For the first time in 12,000 years, the 7 ruling species did not meet with confidence. They met with fear. This cannot continue, said the representative, his tentacles twitching with anxiety. We have lost 40% of our fleet capacity. Our supply lines are in chaos. Our people are beginning to question if this war can be won. It must be won, insisted. If we show weakness now, every young species in the galaxy will rise against us. The humans must be destroyed as an example. And how do you propose we do that? Asked the Ophidian representative, her cold eyes unblinking. Every strategy we have tried has failed. Every advantage we possessed has been countered. These humans adapt faster than any species we have ever encountered. Had no answer. He had ruled the galaxy for 300 years. He had crushed rebellions and exterminated threats without mercy. But he had never faced anything like this. Back on Earth, President addressed the Federation. His hair had gone completely gray in 6 months, but his voice was stronger than ever. We have shown the Council that we will not break, he said. Now it is time to show them that we can win, not just survive, win. Around him, military leaders began planning the next phase of the war. They would not just defend human space anymore. They would take the fight to the Council itself. The tide had turned. The prey had become the predator. And the hunt was about to begin. The war entered its 2nd year, and the galaxy began to crack. The Galactic Council had ruled through fear and power for 12,000 years. The 7 species had disagreed on many things over the centuries, but they had always stood together against outside threats. Now, for the first time in history, that unity was breaking apart. Ben Carter was not a soldier. He was a diplomat, 52 years old with a kind face and a gift for understanding people, even when those people were not human. Before the war, he had spent 20 years building relationships with alien species, learning their languages, their customs, their dreams. Now he was about to use everything he had learned. His small diplomatic ship landed on the They were the youngest members of the council, having joined only 300 years ago. They were insect-like beings with 4 arms and large compound eyes that saw the world in ways humans could barely imagine. The other council species treated them as children, tolerated but never respected. Carter had requested this meeting through secret channels. The Hive Queen, a massive being named, had agreed to hear him speak. It was a risk for both of them. If the council learned of this meeting, there would be severe consequences. "You come to us in the middle of a war," said, her voice buzzing through translators. "A war your species is losing, according to council reports." Carter smiled. "With respect, Hive Queen, I think we both know those reports are not entirely accurate." His compound eyes glittered. They had their own intelligence networks, and they knew the truth. The council was not winning. The war had become a disaster that grew worse with each passing month. "Why are you here, human?" asked. "I am here to offer you something the council never has," Carter said. "Respect, partnership, equality." He told her about humanity's vision for the galaxy. Not one species ruling over others, but many species working together as equals. He spoke of trade agreements that would benefit everyone fairly. He spoke of shared knowledge and mutual defense. He spoke of a future where they would never again be treated as lesser beings. "The council sees you as servants," Carter said. "We see you as potential friends." Was quiet for a long time. Around her, thousands of workers waited in silence, connected to their queen through bonds that humans barely understood. "The council will destroy us if we betray them," she finally said. "The council is losing this war," Carter replied. "In another year, maybe 2, they will not have the power to destroy anyone. The question is simple, Hive Queen. When the council falls, do you want to fall with them? Or do you want to stand with us?" 3 days later, they announced their withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Their message was broadcast across all frequencies for every being in the galaxy to hear. The news hit the council like a bomb. "Traitors," raged in the council chamber. "After everything we gave them, they betray us for these human vermin." But they were only the beginning. The Ophidians, cold and calculating as always, watched the war with careful eyes. They calculated supplies and losses, trajectories and probabilities. The numbers did not lie. The council could not win this war. Every day it continued meant more Ophidian deaths for a cause that was already lost. Their representative made an announcement during a council meeting. "The Ophidian Collective hereby declares neutrality in this conflict. We will withdraw our fleets and take no further part in military action." "You cannot do this," shouted. "The council stands together or not at all." "Then perhaps," the Ophidian replied coolly, "it does not stand at all." They were next. They had lost 60% of their military capacity. They had been threatened by human raiders. Their population was tired and frightened. When their government requested a separate peace with humanity, President agreed immediately. "Every species that leaves the council is a species we do not have to fight," told his advisors. "We will accept any peace that is offered." But while diplomats worked to end the war peacefully, soldiers continued to fight, and one battle would change everything. Lieutenant Commander Bailey was 29 years old with red hair and a temper to match. He commanded a marine assault ship called the Fury, and his specialty was impossible rescues. When intelligence reported a prison world in council space holding human captives, Bailey volunteered immediately. 7 was a frozen hell of a planet, surrounded by defense stations and patrol ships. Over 200,000 humans were held there, captured from destroyed colonies and conquered worlds. Council scientists were using them for research, studying human biology to find weaknesses that could be exploited. Bailey's assault force was small, just 5 ships and 3,000 Marines. They hit the planet in the dead of night, overwhelming the ground defenses through sheer ferocity. Bailey led the charge personally, his rifle firing until it overheated. What they found in the prison camps would haunt them forever. The Council scientists had not simply studied their prisoners. They had experimented on them. They had cut them apart while still alive to see how their organs worked. They had tested poisons and diseases, recording how long humans could survive. They had done things that no civilized being should ever do to another living creature. Bailey found children in the camps, children who had watched their parents die on operating tables, children who bore scars from experiments, children who looked at him with eyes that had seen too much horror. "Record everything," Bailey ordered his troops, his voice shaking with rage. "The galaxy needs to see what the Council has done." The footage was broadcast everywhere. Across human space, people watched with tears streaming down their faces. Across Council space, ordinary beings looked at what their leaders had done and felt shame. Even the public, loyal to for centuries, began to question whether this war was just. "We are not the villains here," tried to argue in a public address. "These experiments were necessary for the defense of civilization." No one believed him. The images of human children being tortured spoke louder than any words. On Earth, humanity's anger transformed into something harder and colder. Before 7, they had fought for survival. After 7, they fought for revenge. Admiral addressed the combined human fleet, now larger than ever as new ships rolled out of factories around the clock. "We offered them peace," he said. "They answered with cruelty. We showed them mercy. They responded with horror. No more. The time has come to end this. The time has come to show the Council that their age is over." The fleet began moving toward Council space. Behind them, ships from the joined the formation. They were not alone anymore. The final battle was coming, and humanity intended to win it. The combined human fleet gathered at the edge of Council space. 7,000 warships, their hulls gleaming under distant starlight, formed the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Beside them flew 3,000 vessels, their insect-like designs strange but welcome. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the army he commanded. 2 years ago, the Council had declared humanity a primitive species worthy only of extinction. Now humanity was coming to end the Council itself. "All ships report ready," Commander announced. She had been promoted twice during the war, her skills proven in a dozen battles. "The fleet awaits your orders, Admiral." Took a deep breath. Millions of lives depended on what happened in the next few hours. The future of the galaxy would be decided today. "All ships," he said, his voice broadcast to every vessel in the fleet. "Jump to prime." The stars blurred as thousands of ships entered hyperspace together. The final battle had begun. High Arbiter watched from his throne room as warning alarms filled the air. Massive screens showed the human fleet emerging from hyperspace, their ships spreading across the sky like a storm of metal. Around the planet, the last great fleet of the Council moved to intercept them. "How many ships do we have?" demanded. 6,000, High Arbiter, his military advisor replied. "But many are damaged from previous battles. Our shield generators are at 60% efficiency. Our weapons systems have not been fully repaired." Said nothing. He had ruled this empire for 300 years. He had watched species rise and fall, had ordered the destruction of worlds, had believed himself the most powerful being in existence. Now he stood in his ancient throne room and watched his power crumble. "We will not surrender," he said finally. "If this is the end, we will face it with dignity." In space, the two fleets collided like giants. Beams of energy cut through the void. Missiles exploded against shields. Ships died in bright flowers of flame. The Council fleet fought with desperate courage. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for, and they would not go quietly. Their weapons were still powerful, their crews were still skilled, and they had everything to lose. But humanity had something stronger. They had anger. They had determination. They had the memory of burned colonies and tortured prisoners and children who would never see their parents again. Captain Chris led the Nighthawk through the chaos, his small ship dancing between giant warships. He had lost half his crew in the past 2 years, but those who remained were the best fighters in the fleet. "Target their flagship," he ordered. "The Crimson Fury, kill their command structure." The Crimson Fury was War Master's ship, the same vessel that had led the attack on New Helsinki 2 years ago, had been waiting for this moment. His ship dove through enemy fire, missiles exploding around him. His shields failed, his engines screamed, but he did not stop. The Nighthawk's weapons tore into the Crimson Fury's bridge. War Master died before he could give another order, his body consumed by flame. "Target destroyed," announced calmly. Then he turned his ship toward the next enemy. On the ground, General Bishop led the assault on the council chamber itself. She was 46 years old with short gray hair and a mechanical arm that replaced the one she had lost at New Helsinki. She had been fighting since the first day of the war and intended to fight until the last. Her troops stormed through the ancient halls of the palace. Defenders fell before them. Thousand-year-old artwork was reduced to rubble. The sounds of battle echoed through corridors that had never known violence. Bishop found in his throne room, surrounded by his personal guards. The guards raised their weapons, ready to die for their master. "Stand down," Bishop ordered. "This war is over." "Never," one of the guards hissed. "We will never surrender to humans." The firefight was brief and brutal. When it ended, all the guards were dead, and Bishop stood before the High Arbiter with her rifle pointed at his chest. "You were supposed to be primitive," said, his 4 eyes burning with hatred and confusion. "Weak, fragile, just another young species to be controlled. How did you do this?" Bishop lowered her weapon. There was no point in killing this broken old creature. His empire was already gone. "You studied us for decades," she said. "You watched our wars and our disasters. You our diseases and our weaknesses, but you never understood what any of it meant." She stepped closer and flinched back. "You saw a species that nearly destroyed itself a dozen times and thought that made us weak," Bishop continued. "You should have realized it meant we knew how to survive anything. Ice ages, plagues, world wars, the death of our own planet. We survived it all. We came back stronger every time." She looked at the ancient being with something almost like pity. "You should have left us alone. You should have been afraid of us." The Treaty of Earth was signed 6 months later. The Galactic Council was officially dissolved. Its 12,000-year rule ended forever. The lost their empire. The lost their military might. The retreated to there in shame. In their place rose the Galactic Assembly, a new government built on equality rather than domination. Every species, young or old, strong or weak, had an equal voice. Humanity held a permanent seat on the Executive Council, alongside thee and others who had chosen to stand against tyranny. Admiral retired to a small house on Earth, overlooking the ocean. He had spent most of his life in space, fighting battles he never wanted to fight. Now he just wanted to watch the waves and remember the people who had not survived to see this peace. Visited him one evening, bringing a bottle of wine and news from the assembly. She had been promoted again, now commanding the entire human fleet. "Think they will ever try again?" she asked as they watched the sunset. Smiled. The stars were coming out, the same stars that humanity had reached for since the beginning of time. Out there, 100 species were learning to live together in peace. Some of them had once been enemies. Some had been victims. Some had been rulers. Now they were all equals. "Let them try," said. "We will be ready, we always are." The night grew dark, and the stars grew bright. Somewhere out there, children were being born on worlds that had never known human footsteps. Explorers were mapping regions of space that no one had ever seen. Scientists were unlocking secrets that would change the universe. Humanity had walked into the stars as newcomers, curious and hopeful and naive. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had been declared vermin and became leaders. The Council had wanted to end humanity. Instead, they had ended themselves. And the galaxy would never forget the lesson. Do not threaten a species that has already survived everything the universe could throw at it, because they might just throw it back. Far across the galaxy, on a quiet colony world, a young girl looked up at the stars and dreamed of adventure. She did not know about the war that had been fought before she was born. She only knew that the universe was vast and beautiful and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. That was humanity's true victory, not the battles won or the enemies defeated. The future stretching out forever, full of possibility. That was worth fighting for.